Took a little nap. The nap's not good. That's why I like to keep going. So I always say, let's keep going.
I got you.
You got it. Go ahead.
I got you.
All right.
Okay, you're used
All
to taking
right.
charge, aren't you?
You got it.
Ask me first.
Yes. Yes.
So this is your first movie?
Yes.
How are you taking to all of these interviews and all of this press right now? I mean, you were you at Sundance? Were you at Con?
Yeah, I'm taking these interviews. Not so good as you're supposed to think it was, but it's good.
Yeah.
It's fun too. Meet different people, like all of you five.
Do you prefer working from a script or doing this sort of thing?
Doing this kind of stuff because it's coming out naturally. So.
What was your favorite thing filming?
Doing the water scenes and the different things that I had to act like burping and screaming. Those were my favorite scenes.
Were you worried at all about being on that boat?
Not really. It was actually pretty fun though, because I got to pedal. But Mr. Henry would be the one that's always pedaling.
Did he give you any of his pastries?
Oh, yes.
Nah, it's the pastries I used to bring for her. That was one of the things that when I first met her, because she had to feel comfortable with the guy that played her father, and she actually, the first two guys that they had in mind to play her father, she didn't feel comfortable with them. She didn't feel comfortable with them, so they didn't work. They didn't get the part. So when they told me that I was coming down to Homer to meet Nazy for the first time, I had to capture her heart. So I put a whole bunch of pastries together, some cookies and buttermilk drops and all kinds of stuff like that. And I handed it to her with a big old smile, and she looked in there, and I seen that big old smile in her face. I had it, and I knew I had it in. Because she had to feel comfortable. She was 6 years old, so she had to be comfortable with who she's working with.
Was there a lot of bonding going on set? I mean, I'm just curious.
It was just about 2 days. One day, just like he was talking about, and one day we actually went in the kitchen and started cooking.
Yeah, we did some things on set to kind of bring us together. I have a daughter her age, so it was kind of easy for me to kind of relate to she was 6 and my daughter was 7 then, so I was able to communicate with her and kind of touch her like the same things I do with my daughter. I kind of did the same things with her, so it was kind of easy for me to relate to her, a child her age.
Did you actually grill up those chickens? And
yeah, we actually grilled them.
Yes.
It was grilled chickens. That was a real fire. We really grilled the chickens and things like that.
Had a nice meal?
Yeah.
Yes.
Just like all of the seafood that was on the table. That was real seafood. We was really eating it. And when the camera shut down, we didn't stop.
Everybody had to try to stop us because we only had like one bag.
Yeah.
And then they had
We didn't let nothing go to waste.
everybody that was under the table, they came from out of the table and actually went to the top of the table. So, in that one little scene, that whole pond that they had, they ate that whole little thing that they had down there. That one little segment.
What was the most difficult part of filming for both of you?
Being in the fire, whenever I set the fire, that was actually pretty scared because I wasn't expecting that pop. And it was actually hot because fire heats up everything, so you have to have like your door open or a window, so we didn't have nothing open. And I actually went in a box, so that made it worse because they had a hole, but that didn't even help that much. And then mosquitoes kept coming in and in and in.
Getting away from the
all the lights were attracting the mosquitoes outside, so they would come in from different places, and they would just come in and bite you. They'd do anything just to bite you. So if you tried to run away from them, you couldn't because it wouldn't work.
We had to deal with a lot of difficult elements. because, you know, Mr. Zeithlin, he wanted everything to, he didn't want to simulate situations and things like that. And a lot of situations where we was in the water, you know, we could have did it in a warm swimming pool, and no one would have never knew, but, you know, we didn't want to simulate things, so we was in the Mississippi River, in some of the bayous, and a lot of scenes that we shot in the woods, it wasn't simulated situations, it was situations where we was in the woods with real mosquitoes, not little flying things that look like mosquitoes. So some of the elements were difficult, but it brought a realness and an authenticity to the movie, being right in there versus simulating things like that.
So did you catch that catfish?
Yeah, I caught that catfish. We do it like the way we do it in the bayou. We got to learn how to survive when we don't have no fishing poles.
Fish grabbing? Is that what
Fish grabbing,
Yep.
fish grabbing, just like you do fly fishing, we catch them by hand. Yeah, y'all gotta learn that one there. That's some secret there
You
now.
gotta grab it right in there.
Yeah, you gotta grab it between the barbs, and you gotta be real quick. Right, you got that shallow water, you gotta grab it quick.
Next question.
Did you find, I mean, some of these scenes are very emotional.
Yeah.
Very,
Yes.
very hard. Was that difficult for you?
Well, for me personally, you know, some of the scenes was difficult because of, you know, it was hard getting some of these emotions out of me, but some of the scenes that especially the ones that had to do with the storm and the flooding and the certain situations, because I'm from New Orleans, so a lot of these things that we go through in the movie, that we did in the movie, as far as possibility of losing your home, losing your family, you losing your loved ones, getting flooded out, getting caught in dire situations and don't want to leave under all of the worst circumstances in the world. I was caught up in, I was 2 years old when my mom had to take us out the house in the lower ninth ward and put us on the roof when the levees broke for Hurricane Betsy way back in the 60s. And after that, Camille came, we had to evacuate again. So it's an ongoing things that we go through living along the Gulf Coast and in New Orleans. And it's the same thing that I had to be depicted in the movie. So that brought a certain realness and a certain passion that I have for actually going through these things in real life. It brought a certain realness, and I brought a passion to the movie that an outsider that never been through this, that see a storm from the outside, that looks at it on TV and things like that, he wouldn't have brought the passion of a person actually going through this and losing things. And, you know, so I brought a passion and an energy to the movie that an outsider couldn't have never brought to this film.
Did you understand about the survival people, the people that will refuse to leave?
Yeah, because for Hurricane Katrina, I refused to leave. When they're on the news telling everybody it's a mandatory evacuation, it's a storm coming, there might be 22 feet of water, the worst possible scenario is we're going to be under 22 feet of water, they might shut down the city, we might not never be able to come back. 80% of that town still stayed behind. Under the worst circumstances in the world, you know, we're not going to just, you know, leave the land that we love. Our family is buried in this dirt, and I worked so hard to build my bakery up. You think I'm just going to just walk away just because you're telling me to walk away and I might not never be able to come back? They have to drag me out of there. And, you know, that just shows the resiliency of the people that lives on the Gulf Coast. And just like during the course of us shooting this movie, we had to go through the BP oil spill. We had to stop shooting, move all our sets from this dock because the government coming in and taking over, telling us we got to move and stuff like that during the course of our shooting. So it's an ongoing series of problems that we went through and that we're going to have to go through in the future, you know, and we refuse to leave. Our resiliency, we love the land we live on, and that's in real life the people from the New Orleans area. I know hundreds of people that stood back under the worst circumstances in the world. And that's the same thing with this group of people that's on this island. I mean, they facing dire situations, and about to lose everything, but you know they still stand behind and having a party and celebrating the fact that they're not leaving. They're making a stand for what they love and what they believe in. You know, so something is patriotic about standing up for what you believe in. When you believe in something, you stand up for it.
I'm curious. Obviously, with the two main actors, both of y'all. Not having worked before in this arena, But
I've worked before in this arena. I've been through storms. I mean, think about it. I've been through storms. I've been in the water. I've been put on a roof. Been on a roof at 2 years old. So that was one of the things that attracted Mrs. Zeithlin, to get somebody that's from down in these areas down here. He could have brought in a whole outside cast that just would have, did what he told them to do, never been through this, couldn't understand about leaving and losing people and losing loved ones. You wouldn't have understood. But getting a cast that actually go through this stuff, it was real. It was acting. I've done this before. Mm-hmm. So it brought a certain aspect to it that an outsider, Denzel Washington, couldn't have came in and played my part the way I played it, never going through this before in his life. You understand what I'm saying?
I get it. Yeah. I'm just.
I hope you just feel the passion. I'm talking about it right now, and I brought that same energy and passion to the film. Just talking about being caught up in these situations is passionate to me, and I brought that same energy and passion that I'm talking to y'all about it. I brought it to the table when we were shooting this film.
Yeah. Did the director put the cameras front and center in front of y'all, or did he try and kind of work around the areas, and so y'all weren't, staring into the camera 24/7? Did y'all were y'all able to get space?
Yes, a lot of space. Probably too much space, actually.
Camera work was great. We won first place for best cinematography. So the camera work, the way he worked the camera, it was great the way they did the cameras. I don't know much about the camera work in there. They showed it because basically they showed most of the camera work was showed at her aspect, at her level, So they shot a lot of things to look at it from Nazy's point of view and things like that, you know what I'm saying? So they did a lot of special camera work to suit versus me. They was focusing on, Nazy.
Mm-hmm. They actually had to buy something.
Yeah.
And it had to strap around his waist, and it goes over his head with the camera.
Some special things they had to get to look at everything from her point of view, because they constantly wanted to be, focused on Nazy.
I had to be focused on the camera. So.
Was there a lot of improv?
Well, yeah, because Mr. Zeithlin, he gave us a lot of latitude as far as the script is concerned. Uh-huh. We'll sit there for hours and hours, me and Mr. Zeithlin, even before we started shooting. We went over every part of the script. We'll go over, he'll give me the script. Me and him will go over it, we'll read it. He'll give me an understanding about what the scene means. Then he'll take the script and throw it away. And he said, Mr. Henry, tell me how you would say this in your own words versus trying to say things in his words. Like me and y'all are talking, things are coming out so natural because I'm saying everything in the words that I want to say it in. But if I was reading off a script that somebody wanted me to say to y'all, it wouldn't be as natural. So he would tell us how we say it in our words and things like that. Then he'll come back the next day and have the same thing, but in our words. And the script would say the same thing. It would mean the same thing, but it would be in the way we would naturally say it. So he gave us a lot of latitude as far as the script and things like that. He did the same thing with Nazy. She'll tell you how they used to sit down and she used to do things with her.
We'd sit down after the setting whenever everybody leaves. We'll sit down and we'll go to his computer and we'll type down some things that I didn't say or I wouldn't say, or that he misspelled or did anything, or that line wasn't good enough for me, so he made it shorter. So we would just stay after, and everybody would probably leave, or they would stay just to chill and have fun because they were old enough to stay, but I wasn't. So I had to go whenever I had to go. So.
You had to work shorter hours than the rest of them?
No, I had to work pretty much longer hours because we would stay after all the shooting is done, and we would stay and do different things, like redo a scene or so, and we would just go to the script that we would do tomorrow, and we would fix all that up. So that's what we did on the first day. We stayed and we looked on his computer and see what we could have did, and then we went go do the scene, and it all just came out naturally.
She had a tutor on set with her. She had a
Hannah
tutor
Banana.
on set with her, and yeah, everything was controlled. She was in a very controlled environment, and she had lots of breaks and lots of pizza parties.
Because I wouldn't do anything.
Yeah, sometimes she don't feel like working. Sometimes a 6-year-old girl, need a break, and we don't understand that she need a break. And sometimes she'll get on set and she'll fold these hands up like this. She'll cross them legs and she'll do that mouth like this. And I'm not ready to work right now. And we give her a break and promise her a pizza party when everything over or something, and she'd say, all right, let's get back to work. She blackmailed us.
What about the really tough scenes between the father and the daughter, like when you would tell her, you go to your house, you don't come to my house?
Well, because a lot of the
bus scene, for
scenes,
example.
that may seem like, I have a daughter her age, that she was 6 when we were shooting. I have a daughter 7 years age, so I was able to kind of communicate and understand a child. But the things in certain these scenes where it may seem like I'm yelling at her, things like that, but I'm not yelling at her, because I'm dying in the movie, and she's the most important person in the world to me. So I'm constantly throughout the course of the film trying to emphasize with an urgency the importance of her to not to need to know how to do these things. You have to know how to do these things because Daddy's not going to be here. So I was always emphasizing with a passion, with an urgency, that you got to know how to do this. You got to know how to catch this fish. Put your hand in that water. You got to know how to go this. Go do that because Daddy not going to be here and she don't have her mother. And that's, as a father, that's the same thing we have to do. If we know we not going to be here, we know we dying, what we're going to do is we're going to do everything in our power to make sure that our kids are okay. So I was constantly throughout the course of the movie emphasizing the urgency of knowing how to do these things because your dad is not going to be here. You don't have your mom, and you got to be able to run these things when Daddy not here and survive on your own. So it was a passion of emphasis and things like that. It was urgent that you know how to do these things because Daddy's not going to be here.
So how are you enjoying going around the country?
I would sleep on every plane. That's what I would do. I don't care if I'm not tired. I just fall asleep because I need rest. Cause we just go another day and fly out. Go another day, fly out. Go, fly out. And it's just like you just keep repeating it, so you just get used to it after a while. Be like, we did that day, let's go. And then we do that day, we did that day, let's go. So it's just like a little pattern.
You know what city you're in now?
No. I think we're in Dallas. Or
That's right. Just like when we first started Rally Frying, when we went to Cannes and Paris, all these different places, I used to ask her mother, like, what today is? Because we changing so many time zones, and, it's 6 o'clock here, and it's 1 o'clock there, and we come back, it's 8 o'clock there, and 6 o'clock here. I look at my watch, I never reset my watch to my central time, and I'm looking at, I forget I ask what day it is, what time it is, I don't know, it's getting confusing. Need one of these watches with all the different time zones in it.
I got that.
Yeah.
You've got that one.
Yeah.
all of these things. Yeah, well.
Either one.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have opportunities that we have to be about.
Oh, you already have opportunities.
Things are happening that we can't, opportunities are coming, yeah. You'll hear about them. Can't say nothing
Had
right
you
now.
ever expected this in your life?
I've been a restaurateur. I own a bakery called Buttermilk Drop Bakery and Cafe, and this is something I never expected. And no matter what the situation is, you know, the bakery is my foundation. It's something I build and something that I can pass on to my kids. And that's when I first started being in business, you know, my whole thing was doing this, and when I'm not here, this is gonna be for my kids and for my grandkids and things like that. So I can't pass an acting career on to my children. Just like in a movie, it is so important to me that she survived, and in real life, this is for my kids, this is theirs, and it's so important for me. When I'm not here, when I'm up in heaven, I can look down and they run in the bakery and everything's okay with them. So nothing in the world will make me jeopardize the foundation that I'm setting for my kids. No Hollywood and things like that, a possible movie career. That'll be selfish to my kids and myself to be, you know, we're so concerned about me instead of my kids. As a father, that's not what father's supposed to do, because that's not what my father did for me. Because when my father passed away, he left me and my brothers and sisters something to, you know, a legacy and something to fall back on. So, you know, I'm going to pass the same thing on to my kids, and I want my kids to do the same thing for their kids. So I want to set a legacy and something with my kids that's bigger than a selfish things for myself. I sacrifice a lot of things that I can have. I don't want to make sure my kids have the best education in the world. I have 5 kids and, you know, private schools, and I be without a lot of things so they can have. And, you know, that's the same thing in the movie. And that was one of the things that attracted Mr. Zeithlin to me, because they used to come over to the bakery. Their studio was actually right across the street from the bakery where they used to do casting at. And they used to come over to the bakery every day, and they seen how much respect that people in the community had for what I do. They used to, everybody come in the bakery, my customers, everybody shakes my hand. Everybody, Mr. Henry, boss, they can come in there, hey, Mr. Henry, and they seen that quality in me, the same quality that they seen in real life with me. They needed in that character, because everybody looked up to Wink in the movie when a problem occurred. He had to destroy the storm, blow up the levee, and people look up to me in that same aspect in the community where I'm from. So it brought another certain realness to the film and a quality that they needed in that character.
Any last questions? One more?
That was
We're good?
We said enough? I got enough in?
All right, then y'all stay here and we'll bring in Ben.
Okay.
And then,
We can get up?
yeah, you're done.
All right.
Nice.
Thank you.
It was nice talking with
Nice
y'all.
meeting
man.
you.
Y'all have a great day.
Nice talking with y'all.
Okay, let's go around the table.
Thank you. Lovely talking with you. Fine.
We said we could just bottle some of that energy.
Bryan, Bill, Alice, and Frank.
Nice to meet you.
Hi. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
So I guess I'll start off. When dealing with this kind of young cast, especially with so many that haven't worked before, did you try and get her to come into, you know, the atmosphere and the mood and the setting, or did you just kind of let that naturally kind of progress and just do what she does?
No, I mean, she was in training. Whether she remembers it, I don't know. Or whether it seemed like training, I don't know. You know, we would sort of have different things for her to do every day in pre-production. We had a long rehearsal process, and you know, she would go back. My sister built and lived in the house where Wink lives in the movie during production, and so I would send her back with my sister, and they would hang out with the animals, and she would slowly get comfortable hanging out with the pig, touching the pig, you know, holding the chickens, which isn't something that she normally does. We'd put her inside boxes and have her draw things, you know, which was fun for her. We would have her and Mr. Henry cook meals together and sort of get to know each other and bond in different ways. And so there's all kinds of things that we did that were kind of games, just that built her relationships with the other characters and got her kind of acclimated to the world of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
She told us how she would work with you, making changes in the script.
Mhm.
That you would work on the computer.
Yeah.
Okay. When she started, how did she learn her lines? This is what I'm trying to technically figure this out.
I mean, she's incredibly intelligent, as you guys can tell, you know, but it was the biggest challenge was probably just retaining information, you know, and we had to redesign the script. You know, if she was supposed to say a long line in sequence, a lot of times we would look at it at night. What she's talking about is she would come, you know, I would put her at the computer and I would be sitting next to her, and she was sitting on my lap or something. We would, look at a line and she would say, this line is too long. Like I need a break in the middle of this line. So then I would think of something for someone else to say at that moment, or some reason for us to cut away at that moment. So we'd break it up both kind of in that way, and then also just as far as any word she didn't recognize or a phrase that she didn't think she would say, I would let her change it and put it in her own words. And that process happened for really every single character in the film. But for her, you know, I let her kind of actually type because you know, she was just learning how to type, so it was fun for her, you know.
Okay.
How did you come to the source material? Like, been seen? How did you hear about the play? How did it evolve from that to?
Yeah, well, the play is by a friend of mine who I met at a playwriting camp when I was 13 years old. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. It was sort of produced once, but it mostly I knew it because I knew her work, and she would send me all her stories and plays all the time, and we were really close friends our entire lives. You know, I was actually working on doing something with her work separately from the idea of this film, and they really, it's like sometimes as you work on things, you discover what you're interested in because of the commonalities, and I realized there was this thread between her story, which is about a little girl losing her father, and the end of the world coming as that happens, and then my story, which was this group of holdouts in this community that was losing their place, and so it was that kind of the similarity of the emotion in the two stories sort of made me realize that they should be told as one story, and her story kind of became a way into probably a sort of more vaguer concept that I had of the film that I wanted to make.
Now she lives in Georgia, is it?
She's from North Florida, but sometimes she says Georgia because she's literally right over the border. It's a lot more like Georgia than Florida.
So did you go there to work with her on the script? Is that?
We did that as one thing that we did. We went and stayed with her parents, and you know, her father is a big part of the inspiration for Wink, and her animals are a big part of the inspiration for the animals in the movie. So I went out there for a couple of weeks, but we, you know, I knew that I wanted to make a story about Louisiana, and so one of the first things was to start translating that story into kind of the geographic and cultural and you know, context of Louisiana. So the main place that we wrote the script was at this marina at the very, very bottom of the road in Louisiana. It's like, if you look at a map, it just looks like marsh and water, but there's one road that stretches all the way down, and there's a marina at the very end of it. And so we had a room in that place, and we would write on the docks and write, you know, sort of, you know, when we're writing, we're casting and location scouting and researching kind of all at the same time, and letting things that we discover rewrite the script and modify the script. So it's sort of always evolving as we look for the elements that are going to be the movie.
The oil spill aspects, was that just a coincidence that it's in there, or because it did begin?
Well, I mean, we shot the film we wrote the film 3.5 years ago, started shooting it about 2 years ago, and the actual first day of photography was the same day as Deepwater exploded. So it wasn't something that was consciously in the script initially, but it was this very, very visceral parallel that was happening as we shot. And, you know, we shot largely in sequence, and so as nature dies in the film, and that was happening in the water, and we were right. I mean, the town where we were was one of the closest places to Deepwater, if not the closest, and we actually, the marina that I'm talking about, where we wrote the film, was taken over by BP as their base of operation for the cleanup, and several of our locations were on the wrong side of the boom, so they were contaminated. The water was contaminated, and we had to negotiate with BP to actually get our boats past the booms and into the areas where we planned to shoot. So it was like a very weird, you know, it's one of those things that makes you feel like you've written a story that is true and important, because it was more and more stuff happening, you know. Yeah, life imitating art or something like that.
Did that extend the shoot? substantially? Or?
No, it wasn't. I mean, it's really interesting because, BP was in such deep shit that they were incredibly cooperative with anybody who wanted to do anything pro-community. So, it was an extremely complicated negotiation. It was really hard to get them to cooperate with us just because there's 1,000 people you need to talk to, but their whole mandate was to be the nicest guys you could imagine. So
they didn't double your budget.
No, they opened the booms for us. They let us through, and it was surreal, but more than it was an obstacle. We didn't have to fight BP to make the film or anything like that. But I mean, the town where we were is being, there was a sort of a lag in the effect, but things are getting really bad right now. We thought it was going to be bad immediately, but the last 2 fishing seasons have been the worst in their history, and so things are really, all that stuff is really coming home to roost right now. It's pretty tragic.
You mentioned that this was one of your friends that you've grown up kind of knowing that you adapted this from. Obviously, hindsight is always going to be 20/20, but what kind of pressures did you have to kind of put this in film from her work? I mean, was it anything unique because it was your friend, or was it a good working relationship? Oh no, it was very. Yeah, there was never any we fought about story elements and what was going to happen and not, but it wasn't like it's not like the film is actually an adaptation of the play. It's really it's inspired by the play. There's no scene from the play that's in the movie. It's really the characters and the tone and the idea. So there was never a thing of we have to keep this scene in, and it was always going to be a total reinvention of what the source material was.
So what was the most difficult aspect of making the entire production?
I don't know. Every stage of it had its own. It all I think right now I would probably say the sound mix. But that's just because that's the most recent thing that I did. It's hard as on the whole it feels like an athletic event that is almost impossible, some sort of triathlon or something like that. We try to set it up that way so that there is something athletic about making the movie. It's not this sort of controlled thing where you very delicately paint by numbers and you're in a nice air conditioned studio and all that. It's about sort of pushing yourself to the limits physically, going to extremely hostile locations, hostile environments, building things like they're real instead of building facades or building things that can be green screened or animated or something like that. It was all about kind of challenging ourselves in the moment to capture the story, against the elements, which the story is about. We wanted the production to reflect the story, and it's such a battle of man versus nature that we kind of replicated that for ourselves. And I think that it, I don't know that I feel like that was hard. It was sort of the idea, but it was physically grueling, but in a good way. It feels good.
Being your first feature, is this your statement of style, or is this just the way that this film kind of came about, or?
I hope my style is always evolving. You never want to get stuck on one thing, but I think certainly it wasn't an accident the way the film feels. I think that we think of this film as not a culmination of something. It's sort of the first. We've sort of as a group have kind of developed a set of tools that are pretty different from the kind of tools that you use to make a film normally, and our production process is totally unconventional and largely out of inexperience, but also very much by kind of believing in certain ways of going about production. So I think that we consider this the first, and we hope to make more films that are different, completely different, but with the same sort of principles and the same kind of process behind them.
When watching the film, is there a personal favorite moment of yours that you always look forward to seeing again and again?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a few. There's a few things that were in the script. And the script was massively almost everything from the first. I don't know that anything was in the first draft that's in the final draft. It was completely destroyed over and over again. But there's a couple things in it that you always try to explain on paper, and no one could ever understand why they were in the movie. And I held on to a couple, and probably my favorite is when the little girls swim to the floating brothel and kind of experience this heaven of mothers that didn't really make a lot of narrative sense. It's all the things that don't make narrative sense, but that make emotional sense. That was really kind of the guiding principle of the structure of the film, was that you didn't need to structure. You could have a movie with like an active movie with lots of action, things that are exploding and setting on fire and beasts coming and all these things that are sort of part of narrative cinema traditionally, but that you didn't need a plot-based structure, that you could have an emotional structure where the sort of development of her emotions and the development of her feeling would be what caused one event to follow the next one. And it always felt like at this moment in the film when her father's illness is inevitable, when there's nothing she can do to save him anymore, that she had to go get comforted somehow in order to make her last move. And it's hard to articulate why that was so important, but I always felt that it was, and I really feel when you go to that scene and you get this kind of feminine sort of love that's in such stark contrast to the kind of male-dominated love of the rest of the film, it balances the movie in this way that I always find like really satisfying.
Yeah. I remember them saying like "you're the man" or something like that to her.
Always, yeah. I mean, he's really teaching her the only way he knows how, which is how to be a man, and that's the only way he knows how to survive is through muscle and grit and strength and masculinity. Yeah.
Was there a defining moment when you decided like I want these two people to be in my movie?
Well, it was one at a time. It was her first. We knew the whole film was going to be centered around her. And we went through our casting process. Took almost a year. We looked at 4,000 kids. And over that time, I realized that the voice of the character was not the age I thought. I thought we could pull it off with a 10 or 11-year-old. But then eventually, I realized that it needed to be much younger. And when we had a girl who was 5 years old walk into an audition and be as kind of fierce and intelligent and independent and strong as she was, that was the moment where we knew we had our person, even though she wasn't exactly like the character, that we could find our way to express the film through her. And then we tried several different people as Wink, as her father, and they were, that part was actually supposed to be a professional actor in the design of the film, and we couldn't get the chemistry right. And it wasn't until Mr. Henry came down, who was, raw as can be as an actor, but you just felt some sort of, they felt like a father and daughter intangibly, because they both, I think they reflected each other's fearlessness. They both are such confident, fearless people, and something about that made them feel, and just the sort of commonality of their experience. They both are from the region, which the other people weren't, and that, I think that is something that glued the film together in a way that is hard to describe, but it just didn't quite feel right with somebody from Los Angeles or New York trying to play it. There's something in the eyes and there's something in the ether around them that connected.
With such an organic kind of, pre-production and then production, editing a film is a very kind of secluded kind of thing. Were they still involved at that point, or was it very much secluded, and did you kind of miss that interaction?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, you shrivel up in post-production. It's a funny process. I get real pale and fat. The film is this physical thing where you come out of it strong and weathered, and then you just kind of shrivel up for about. It took us 2 years to edit the film, so it was a long, long process, and the editors don't get as much credit as they're due for sort of, a film with this amount of chaos embedded into the production inevitably. We don't get everything we go after. You try to overcome all these things, but sometimes you make it, sometimes you don't, and so you end up with a script with holes in it. Lots of gaps in what you thought was going to be exposition, and sort of it took a long time to get the film into her head. To actually get the subjectivity right, where you always felt you were experiencing things through her, and so that process took an unbelievable amount of time and work. And so my two editors, Crockett Dube and Afonso Gonçalves, sort of don't get enough credit for bringing all these kind of really rickety elements to this point where you can watch the film and you never think about it.
The music in the film is awesome.
Thanks.
Is there going to be a soundtrack? And
yes.
Did you do the music for the film?
Yeah, I co-wrote the music.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. It was really good.
Thanks. But yeah, the soundtrack will be out hopefully by the time we release on the 27th online.
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
I really liked it. Are there any people in your life, or like that were beacons for you growing up to want to do film, like that shaped your creative life?
Costa Rica was like the biggest one. Emir Costa Rica, I don't know if you know him. He's a Serbian filmmaker. You're talking about inspirations or like people actually who I know?
No,
They're both. But yeah, no, Costa Rica, he's a Serbian filmmaker that makes these kind of wild, gypsy, mystical adventure comedies. And I think the type of reality in my films is probably the most similar to his. And also the type of production, like you watch those films and there are animals running all over the place. Every scene, there's 300 geese running across screen, and just there's this chaos about it that both looked like something that I wanted to do, aesthetically, and also just something that I wanted to do on a personal level. I just loved it. It looked like so much fun and such an adventure to make those films, and so that was a huge inspiration for me. And then just, I'm a movie addict. So from when I was born until, grew up on Disney movies and watched The Princess Bride 300 times and Willow like 180. I have astounding view counts on every VHS tape that was ever in my house. So, and then just, and I love film from all eras and all types of high art film and lowbrow film. It's all sort of part of my, I don't really make distinctions between them. And I always feel like this film is a real mix between kind of a more like lyrical type of cinema and then just sort of the dumbest AMC Palace stuff that I love going to see every weekend. And
oh yeah, I know.
Yeah.
So was it fun having your own prehistoric beasts in this movie?
Oh yeah, we also did the sound at Skywalker, so we've hidden some sound of Jurassic Park inside of the movie. So yeah, it's in there. That footstep is you can search for it. But yeah, and it was always like people asked me if it was an add-on, but it always was so much embedded in the fabric of the film. Was one of the first. You kind of get a couple key images when you realize I'm going to make this movie. This is going to be the film I'm going to make, and her staring down that beast was always, that was always the poster to me. It was like, this is what I'm seeing. This is what this film is somehow about, and a lot of it you kind of backtrack out of what is it about this image? What does this image mean? And and I think that and getting to create those things and sort of read. We did almost all the special effects are extremely archaic. It's almost all practical, with the exception of some green screen stuff at the end, but nothing's CGI'd or animated. And so it was you get to go back and sort of read about Terry Gilliam movies and how they did the miniatures and building cloud tanks based on photos, and we get to sort of relive the 80s and 90s ILM world in our little garage that we made the film in.
Oh, any upcoming projects you're gonna do, or any ones you want to tackle yourself in the future? Yeah,
I'm working. I'm gonna be. The next thing I do will be the next of these movies, basically, and it'll be hopefully bigger and better, but the same kind of same people, same production. Hopefully gonna use a lot of the same cast and the same. It'll come from the same world, but be a new story but another kind of like big epic folktale that's built by hand.
With coming from Sundance and then Cannes and having such critical kind of success and praise, but yet not having a release yet, are you being given more money or more opportunities even just based on that, or is it still kind of you're still kind of working and building and trying to grow in that direction?
Well, I'm still shoving all the free food in my pockets, if there's certainly opportunities to go direct Final Destination 7 if I wanted to, but I don't. So but it is going to give us a lot of. The exciting thing is that it's going to give us. I don't know that we could have. If no one had ever seen this film, I don't know we could have gone and done this again. It was really. You use up every favor that you possibly have, coming to you making a film like this, and so hopefully we can do. I think this will be something that allows us to do this again, and that we can leverage to protect the method and be able to, feed ourselves while we do it next time. So.